Welcome to another episode of She Unleashed. She Unleashed is brought to you by Kubyane, and I just marvel at bringing all these powerful women from across the globe and who come to share their powerful stories and share their experience so that we can learn and we can also find ways and strategies on how to overcome certain challenges that we have. Today is really crazy because for the first time in She Unleashed, we are bringing you a gentleman and a well kind of researched gentleman that I've watched over years blossom in a partnership with a very powerful woman who we've heard in some of our recordings in the past, Pretty Kubyane. Now, today we have Shadrack Kubyane, their husband, the man who is standing side by side with Pretty, and they are building amazing things. They're building a conglomerate called Coronet Blockchain. I don't know where to start in terms of your profile, Shadrack. And I know you're such a humble human being, but you are Africa thought leader and thought influencer for 2021 and 2022. You are LinkedIn top 1%. You are a lot of things. You're a founder of an amazing organization called Coronet. And Coronet has multiple other vehicles beneath it. And your professional profile speaks for itself. You've done a lot in sales environment. You've done a lot in growth strategies in Africa. You've worked for Deloitte, and eventually you started your own conglomerate. Welcome to She Unleashed, Shadrack.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure and privilege to be here, and it's such an honor that a titan of industry as yourself has created a watering hole for women that come thirsting for knowledge, thirsting for belonging, thirsting for companionship, because at the very top, especially for female executives, at the very top, and men alike, it can get a bit lonely. So power to you for creating commonality and creating this platform called She Unleashed. I think what becomes what is known as She Unleashed is not just unleashing her, but it's unleashing families, it's unleashing ventures, and hopefully it's unleashing society one show at a time. Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you kindly.
Absolutely. And I think one of the realizations that we have as women is we cannot have the conversation about unleashing her in isolation. Unleashing her happens in multiple formats. Yes, she can unleash herself on her own, but it helps to have an ally in him and an evolved him to actually form this powerful force. And I selected you because of exactly that and how I see you in your partnership with Pretty.
Such a delight, because I think what you're pointing to is an enabling environment that is in favor of her unleashing, and that is quite supportive, quite embracing of her. It could be you as the audience, it could be you as the host, it could be you as a person who overhears about this show indirectly. So I think her unleashing, she needs to be embraced first and foremost in the original institution, before any institution, called the institution of the family unit. And of course, the secondary institution to that, we don't recognize it as an institution, but the people she does life with, her power circle, her close-knit circle, her sense of belonging. So I think there is that enabling environment, the nurturing environment, and I'm glad that She Unleashed is that voice on a mountaintop to say, listen, your unleashing is key. So relook at your quadrants around you, relook at your domains, even as you aspire to your dominion.
Wonderful. Shadrack, who is this Shadrack? Every time I have a conversation with you and I see you as a titan in world stages, you are a thought leader when it comes to blockchain globally. You are called in multiple stages and your energy is just out of this world. Who are you?
That's a good question. I think first and foremost, I would give recognition that before any qualifications, before any significant milestones in industry, I am first and foremost a village boy at heart. I was raised the organic way, no hard feelings against those that kind of like grew in the skyscrapers in the world. Bless them. They have their narrative, they have their journey. But I grew up living off the ground. I grew up knowing where my potatoes came from. I grew up raising chicken in order to kind of like work towards that what we call it, that 7 colors. And for our global audiences, 7 colors is a treasured South African meal where we really go gourmet in the family unit. So we kind of like, I could point where the carrot came from. I could point where the pumpkin came from. So the 7 colors were really a kaleidoscope or a prism that kind of like reveals the colors around me. I was there with dirt under my nails. I knew where they came from. So why that village upbringing is important is because just like how the village put dirt under my nails, the village also helped me to stay grounded no matter what I achieved. Because later, some of you may be aware that I left that village at 14, turning 15, went to the big city, but I took the village with me, not in a backward sense, but in a sense of a value core of what I value. I value transparency. I'm one of those people that have to know where my dinner came from. It's not an OCD thing. It's just a value thing. So I've got that transparency thing. I've got that thing of valuing the human-to-human connection besides the business cards, besides the business title. So you can call it the villager in me in the boardroom. So of course I went through corporate, as you touched on it, through Deloitte. We did some fun things there. And of course I then evolved into kind of like a decade-long management practice that specialize in growth, but still the villager in me will still recognize and honor the people in front of me. I don't know if I would have such an organic honor code for those that I'm privileged to do life and business with if it wasn't for my village upbringing. Maybe some of your audiences out there, maybe you get your honor code somewhere else. Maybe it was instilled in the family, maybe it was instilled by maybe Harvard grade education, I'm not sure, but I fetch my belonging and my roots from the village upbringing. Of course, later when I came into coronet blockchain, even though blockchain is kind of like relatively an emerging technology, it was a familiar picture to me because I go like, wait, you mean to tell me that now the tomato I have in my fridge or on my dinner table could have traveled 11,000 kilometers all the way from the US, but I get to follow it through each and every of those kilometers. I get to know where it comes from. So I think now it's just a homecoming through blockchain into the global village through coronet blockchain. So that's in a nutshell, the villager in the boardroom and the villager who's now taking on Africa's plight to become transparent, to be transformed, and to really see the future we've been longing for, which won't come from the West. It will come from within. The West can come along, but it will be materialized by people like you and me and the audiences that all dare to be unleashed and lead from the front lines.
That's amazing. It's a great background. And I like how you bring in parallels on how it has created the Shadrack we see today. So we spoke about the interesting topic of she unleashed and she being unleashed by all these elements around her life. Looking at where we at as a country, but also globally, do you think the world is ready for she unleashed?
I think the world is ready and is not ready. And I'm going to tackle both. I say the world is ready because the world is made up of individuals, is made up of communities, is made up of the companies around us, is made up of the government units all around us, is made up by various movements. So all these units that make up society and the individual is the world that is ready at varying degrees of readiness. You know, some are still in a rudimentary stage of readiness where they think, if she's in the boardroom, that token exercise of having her on the board, she better thank us every day that we did her a favor, that she dare be among us, you know, as the what do you call it, the superhumans, the male race, you know, my people. So it's almost like for as long as those perceptions still persist in the boardroom space, especially, which is the context of one of the contexts of Unleash, it's like almost we're going forward and falling backwards. And then there is that community that is not ready at all. They almost collide with this violent thought. It's a violent thought to them because of who they are, you know. And what's weird, I'm gonna maybe bring a surprising element here. I'm gonna bring a wild card. When I say about the world not being ready, I'm not referring to men. I'm referring to both men and women. I'm gonna tell you why. There's a female leader who once said, you know, in my business journey, men have hurt me. And people go like, oh, that's a bit expected, although it's regrettable. But then she paused, and then she went on to say, but women have wounded me.
Oh, wow.
Like, okay, now what happened there? It's because just like how the institution of Blackness or the Black community has at times been violently treated by the other race, and later on, you see what's called Black on Black violence. And you go like, where did this come from? This is an anomaly. So in that same sense, for as long as she is not comfortable in her skin, she might become threatened by another she. Let's underline that part. And then for as long as he has not dealt with the demons in his cupboard or in his past, then he's not going to be comfortable in his own skin. No matter how many qualifications he pins on that wall, still the inner person, the inward man, if that man is not content in his achievement, is not defined by his DNA, but is defined by a bro code that says, you need to see you look at her in a condescending way, whoever her is. Could be the daughter, could be a female peer, it could be fellow female board members, it could be his wife, it could be whoever, it could be his mom. Like, bro, your mom is not cool. So whatever he aspires to, is he gonna be true to his own code? Forget the bro code. Is he going to be true to his own code of values and code of ethics that he lives by, that no policy can ever legislate into his life? It has to be who he is. So yes, the world, to circle back to what you asked, the world is ready, but not ready for her to be unleashed. The world that is ready at varying degrees or at varying stages of their readiness. And the world is not ready because, you know, there's that thing that says no army in the world can ever push back or resist an idea whose time has come. Now, while I really want to respond with a standing ovation with that, but that's an idea. That's just an idea. What about a woman who is kind of like bursting at the seams with ideas, with potential, with energy? What about her entering our space? I would dare say that no army of men, no army of women, and no army of institution or seismic policy activity that violently tries to either delay or slow her down can stop a woman who has made up her mind that I'm going to be unleashed. And those that are like-minded, we're going to be unleashed. And, you know, I'm going to be a bit real here. Some of those women that are attempting to be unleashed may be coming from broken homes. They may even be navigating a home environment that's a bit acidic to them, that's not in favor of their unleashing. But if she has made up her mind that she's going to be unleashed, she will do something that the animal kingdom does very well. I wish us, the human race, did that more. She will locate her like-minded sisters and peers and colleagues in industry, and they will actually join forces to really trigger that unleashing until those things that used to tramp her or kind of like put a lid on her growth, until she kind of like soars above them. So yes, there we have it.
Amazing. And you bring many concepts
Yeah,
with your conversation and your feedback.
yes,
One I would like to take you back to is we took it back to South Africa in our conversation,
yes,
and we said
absolutely,
South Africa is dealing with a double challenge. And
absolutely.
we are dealing with a double challenge, and it's manifesting in really negative kind of outcomes. I mean, the issues that we have of gender-based violence. You had a very nice narrative of putting it and saying this is
Yeah.
what the root cause of everything. Would you like to share about our
I would
conversation?
I would love that. I would love that. Let me firstly say we've got one of our mentors in the US, a very, very familiar face, Bishop T.D. Jakes, both a titan in the faith, but also a titan in the movie sector and also a titan in industry. So he exchanges, him and his wife, Dr. Sarita and Jakes, they switch heads. So they're not like one dimensional. So yes. So one of the things he said, sadly, at the age of around 17, he lost his dad. He lost his dad to kidney failure. And the reason why I'm linking that, coming back to South Africa, is that one of the reasons why he lost his dad, such a regrettable thing, because his dad was an entrepreneur, a loving figure, is because his dad was misdiagnosed. By the time they picked up the correct diagnosis, he was literally a few steps away from death's door, and
Sure.
he was on his way out. And
Mm,
why is that important to us as a nation? Is that perhaps from a media perspective and
mm,
from a social dialogue, we cling on too tightly to this notion of gender-based violence, but we don't follow the root cause. We don't follow the diagnosis, because what's known as gender-based violence or violence towards women, it's actually a mirror reflection of an identity crisis in the men that are perpetuating such violence at varying degrees. And we have a history in South Africa. So, some of your global audiences around the world may be aware of our really, really tense past through the days of apartheid, preceded by the days of colonialism. So that kind of like creates a bit of an identity complex where on a national scale, the institution of men is under attack, but no excuses left there, because remember, we were both in the same boat with the women, so they were treated harshly, we were treated harshly. However, from a healing perspective, looks like there's a bit of a hangover of issues undealt with by our kind of like wicked past, where we were booted around physically, and now later that scenario is manifesting in a workplace where we as men, I'm going to include myself, we may at times, depending on whether we feel strong that day or not, some days are different, we feel perhaps emasculated by certain economic dynamics in the workplace. And I wanna mention the two pillars, the power center in the home, because that's where everything starts, was actually governed by the physical muscle. How strong are you as a head figure, male figure, and the economic muscle? Like when daddy is home, when such and such uncle is home, we are fine. Like we don't understand it, but he's gonna bring in plastics, we are fine. So it's almost like dad the magician, once he goes out there, he comes back, we are fine. So, but now there has seen in the last almost 3 decades of the freedom we now enjoy, we have seen the power center shift in the home and in the community. In the community, they used to be known of the powerful people. Powerful people were by default powerful men. But later on, she's becoming unleashed, not only now, in 2020, but in her early days, whoever she is, in her childhood, she made a resolve to say, you know what? Maybe the village might not recognize me in a certain way. Maybe I might not have a kind of like sportsmanship like in soccer, but I'm gonna discern my inner identity, my inner competencies, and what I'm inclined to. And when she becomes unleashed, and later on she ventures out to the big cities, she becomes a titan, she travels the globe. Her unleashing upsets a certain order, maybe in the home front. When I say home, I don't refer to where she's living. I refer to where she was living in her upbringing. Meaning, maybe they saw her as a liability. Some of our global friends may not understand, but there's a notion of lobola and dowry where she's likely to be married off to another family. She changes her surname and she does what's called ukotiza, meaning she settles into that other side of her femininity, which is a wife. But to be honest, just like how our two mentors I mentioned earlier on wear multiple hats, she's more than a wife. She's a titan of industry. She's a mom. She's a speaker. She could even be a leading scientist. She could be a chairwoman. So when she comes home, and it's interesting that you're actually wearing a coat of many colors. When she comes home wearing that coat of many colors, it kind of like collides with what I can refer to as village misconceptions. And they go like, obviously it doesn't apply to everyone, but maybe there are those that go like, we didn't see her coming. We actually misread her, just like how some people misread the markets. We misread her. So it kind of like introduces a dual confusion. She's confused because she used to be called, like, I'm going to use one of the local social media language, she used to be called nomatriquency, like almost like, like, yeah, she's down there on the pecking order. But now she's no longer nomatriquency. She's no longer kind of like the clown among us. She's a superpower. And they go like the uncles, especially the uncles in the neighborhood, and also the male figures in the home, they now tilt their head when they speak to her, and then they go like, listen, we've got a function coming up. If it be well with you, if we found favor in your sight, would you kindly reach for your platinum card and kind of like wave it like a magic wand, and we know it will be well with us. So those shifting roles, they conflict the stereotypical male gender perspective, and also the female gender, because remember, some of her unleashing is also going to see her winning victories that mom did not win. Mom, we love her, whoever mom is, we love her. She shouldered a lot and she sacrificed so that she can be unleashed. But later on, when she's unleashed and she's on a 7-digit, 10-digit earnings, mom goes like, you know, I restricted myself to one role of wifing. That's all. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. I just, you know, I love the fact that you're wearing a coat of many colors. There is more to her than one color. There's more to her than one dimension. So sometimes her unleashing will confuse and gently confront even the female figures around her that she grew up in. And some will celebrate her and others will remain silent in their confusion.
Wow. That is so powerful. And that on its own is a coat of many colors, because you've touched on very many aspects. Wow. I think we're going to have a lot of you back in the show, because you really you unpack exactly what we're going through. One of the questions I have for you is you spoke about the power couple and how important it is for the journey that a male has to take in order to also fully unleash himself. And it takes us back to exactly the examples that you're talking about, that, you know, part of his roots are also informed by this toxic masculinity that was speaking into his life. And it's important for her to recognize when she's meeting this, you know, fellow who still has to find himself. It's important for her to know that I found a partner here, or I'm just wasting time here. Take me back to the journey that you've had to take as Shadrack to fully evolve into the guy that we're seeing today.
Yes. You know, I must say that no worthwhile journey is without pain.
Yep.
And what, you know, it's like this catchphrase at the gym: no pain, no gain. And that phrase relates to a lot of domains in our life, you know, well beyond fitness. And, you know, I must admit that I hadn't always had this healthy perspective of how life operates, and I've also not always had this healthy sense of self-awareness, and I've also not had this healthy sense of what I can call fair expectations between me and her. Me could be me and my wife. Me could be myself, ourselves, with those that are on our board that are female or male. So that healthy sense of balance and realistic approach to life has not always been there. I was caught up in what I can refer to as a village bubble at some point, where it was just kind of like this kind of like not knowing what I don't know. You see, I didn't know when I was being raised in a village that I was surrounded by toxic masculinity that manifested itself in two ways. We had a village culture of being around the fire. You see, today being around the fire is the closest people to you on social media and the closest people to you offline. But I had my own fire, a physical blaze that I was around. Some of the things that I was told around that fire, I cannot unhear them. And those things were leaning more towards toxic masculinity. I was told practical things like, never trust her. Don't trust her with your banking pin. Don't even let her know where you work. Well, newsflash, she works with me. So she kind of like knows where I work right now. Because we co-founded the company. So, but don't let her know where you work, and don't you dare know what your kind of like your life cover, your financial portfolio. Don't even let her even locate your payslip. The day, it's almost like a mission impossible, like almost like a service. The day she locates your payslip or your earnings. That will trip the clock to a countdown to her placing a hit on you. And I think that toxic masculinity, I later had to contend with it and have a man in the mirror conversation and ask myself this question that I never asked them around the fire. That, so you mean to tell me that collectively you all married the enemy? You mean you wake up next to the enemy? And the enemy could be a female business partner, because let's face it, some superpowers or some competencies, it's something that a man might not have. Maybe he's got about 12 friends that are male, but he can't find that thing. So maybe he like ventures into a business partnership with a woman that's not even his wife. So, but does that mean that he will always be territorial to go like, there are certain facets of the business that she shouldn't touch because she's only here to be a hardworking mule? No, that's toxic. I think the other part of toxic masculinity from my village bubble that I didn't know what I didn't know, my ignorance, was the scenario of the taxi industry. Some of the audiences out there might not know that the taxi industry in South Africa plays a key role in society. Taxis or minibus taxis, they carry 60% of our population in terms of mobility. So they play a key role in society. So some of the role model I had in my village bubble were taxi owners. There were taxi men, there were taxi drivers, and especially the taxi owners. The taxi owners had this thing of, she shouldn't know how many taxis I have. She shouldn't know when I'm cashing up, aka counting the money for the day. She shouldn't know how much money, and she shouldn't even know who works for me. That's weird, because when calamity befalls him, when something dreadful happens to him, the business is gone. And even the children that he treasures so much and the wife that he professed to treasure will end up with nothing within a week, because the assets in the taxi business will be shared at the taxi rank, because there was a cloak of secrecy above all his movements, all his investments, all his secrecy. So when I saw the bold giant figures in my life drop like ants, and then their family becomes impoverished within a week, I figured out that I've got to think differently. I've got to decide differently, and that brings me to the second item. That brings me to then I became resentful. I became resentful for like, I wish I didn't grow up in a village. I wish this whole village romantic picture that I had, look at how harmful it was. Even in the far-flung margins of society in the village, toxicity still sipped in there. And of course, I wrestled with that sense of self. I felt a bit backwards as a villager. I felt robbed. I felt like I should have gone to private school. I felt like I should have I should have grown up in the ivory towers. I should have gone overseas to Disneyland as an excursion. And then, I missed out on this thing. Then about 5 years ago, my wife and I began as a family, even with our kids, we actually began a journey together that we called Gratitude Hour on a Saturday. Gratitude Hour on a Saturday. We thought we were going to exercise gratitude, but being grateful for what went right that week and what went right that year, and we just drilled it back to our childhood. What went right in our childhood? We might not have had such abundance, but my goodness, we had such a close-knit sense of family. Me being raised by my mom, a very entrepreneurial mom, by the way, who was unleashed in her own domain. And then she also worked for the family business. So there was that sense of, we have a lot to be grateful for. And I would want to challenge that she unleashed community to say, if you look, and you'll find that your cupboard is overflowing with a lot more things to be grateful for, more than the things that are going right. So that gratitude culture, which we now carried over into the Sunday, we have a gratitude on Saturday as a family, but on Sunday, we carry that gratitude to share it with our LinkedIn community as well. That is what restored sanity. That is what led to both of us embracing our village humble beginnings, even though the humble beginning was not without toxicity. It was not without rough edges, but we came face to face with such gems that we kind of like harnessed from our village days. So I think, yes, it was not always a smooth sailing, and there's a lot of rough edges that had to be smoothened. I had to come home to self, by going home to where I grew up and how I grew up and with who I grew up. And of course, in my early 20s, I also had to come face to face with, that was mom's journey. That was my absent journey. He was absent. That was his journey. Am I going to be present? That was what didn't go so well. That is what lacked. But now that I'm a young man in my 20s, and now that I'm in my 30s and reflecting with gratitude, how am I going to move the furniture around? How am I going to redecorate my wall? And that's what led to a restoring of a healthy sense of self, because one of our mentors, which is actually a power couple locally, they always compel us to remember that only healthy things grow. And things represent a company or a family. And you mentioned a power couple. I'll close this point with that particular transition to say, a power couple has remained a delusion for me, which is a surprise, because some people view me as a power couple, and they're not wrong, because it's only because I'm stepping into those shoes and being comfortable in those shoes with my wife, and she's doing that too. But let's remember this: a power couple has to, in all fairness, respect team dynamics. What are team dynamics? Most of you leaders, you know what they are: organizational dynamic and team dynamics. What are they? Just one point. You as a unit, as a team unit, are only as strong as the weakest member on the team. So what that means is that there can be no power couple without two powered selves, you see. So that individuality of coming into locating your tone, your DNA, your voice as a woman, as a man, and only then can you fuse to unleash that dynamite of a power couple. There's no plus one in power couple. Both of them are individuals in their own right. They're comfortable in their own skins, and then they're comfortable next to each other in that team dynamic where each other feed off in that synergy of strength and complement each other. But that cannot happen if one of these units that makes up a couple is either wounded and without healing. We all get wounded, by the way. We all take arrows, but we need to check ourselves in for healing. We need to check ourselves in to reconcile with our losses, with our failures, and to celebrate, like with a resounding clap, our wins, much louder than ever. So there is that team dynamic that informs the power couple. A plus one, I need to repeat it, a plus one at an event where you a killer image does not make a power couple. Power couple has more to do with the back end. In technology, there's front end and back end. It has more to do with how she's treated at home, more than how she's celebrated in public. That's what makes a power couple. It has more to do with him feeling honored at home before he's regarded as the blockchain baron of Africa. So that is the building blocks that make up a power couple, with a sense of self-awareness and a sense of kind of like humble parameters of what they can be together.
Absolutely. And you mentioned this is very important, because I think one of the shortcomings of aspiring for this power kind of model is where maybe there could also be a lot of work being done, especially on the, maybe on the female side, and also identifying upfront that, you know what, this is not what will take us there.
I love that identifying, because it brings out a very key point. Let's put it out there. She Unleashed is a journey in the marketplace, as equally as it's a journey in the private space, you know, in your personal life. So in your personal life, of course, you will have your own, I want to just use this very informal word, bay aspirations. You know, you'll have your own bay aspirations, and we all need to begin there with envisioning. But I think when I want to appeal to women, I really appeal. I cannot instruct these leaders. These are bold leaders, so I can't instruct them. I can only place my humble appeal to say, try not to project, try not to kind of like take those big goals or those marriage aspirations and project them onto him as to who he ought to be, in order to fit that Cinderella picture that you have, or that power couple dream that you have. Rather, identify who ticks the most boxes. We're always a work in progress. I must be honest. We are always, women or men, always a work in progress. But somebody has to fulfill the majority criteria, rather than, I think I'm going to edit him. I think I'm going to remold him. I think I'm going to refashion him like a garment. There's a reason why. Remember, there are other female voices that existed in the room before you arrived. There are women of authority that presided over his upbringing and over his maturity. He had a mom. That's why he's here. I mean, how well did he listen to his mom? How was that dynamic? You know, sometimes the best idea that can ever happen to a woman being unleashed in the marketplace and locating that what do you call it, that significant other, could be visiting the family. I put it out there because you need to see how he treats mom. This is not about you. It's about just observing quietly in between dinner or in between whatever, how he treats her, because that is an alert. Is it a green alert, or is it a red caution alert that he actually doesn't have it in him, in his psyche, to respect the institution of a woman? How does he, tell me, in your chats, in your dates, how does he speak about women generally? You know what happens with women, and it happens to me as well as a man. Yeah, you think, I'm gonna bring a business scenario, you go like, this client sounds toxic. This client sounds, but I'm special. But I'm special. I mean, as a company, we are special. We are current blockchain. So he's just gonna kind of like metamorphose into this angelic client. He's not gonna act like a jerk. He's not gonna kind of like be this control freak. He's not gonna try and kind of like shortchange us. No, you shouldn't. You need to listen to your gut feel. You need to listen to your intuition. So on the women's side, it's you need to listen if there's toxicity in how he speaks about women. And sometimes you need to ask him, so if you had female role model, who are they? Do you have them? And he can't say, like, I don't listen to women, because remember, you are going to co-lead in the home. Even though he might be the head traditionally, but there's going to be a dynamic of the two leaders in the cockpit, you know, you're flying this plane together. So how he kind of like gives you room to help commandeer this plane called the home, called maybe the family business, called maybe your careers next to each other, is going to be determined a lot by what happened in the 30 years of him being here on earth. It's going to be how he treated his teacher. If he only speaks about his male teachers, like this bromance thing, maybe you need to ask, did you actually have any female teachers in your life? I'm just curious. I'm not accusing anybody. Did you actually have female role models? And then you observe without investigating him. You're just chatting. I mean, you're just chatting. So it's a laid back, let your head down, hear what he's saying. So those things are really telling. Remember earlier on in our chat, we said society is ready at varying degrees for her to be unleashed. Now, is he ready? Is Bay ready? At what degree is he ready for you to remain on your growth trajectory? I'm going to close this point with this. Sometimes you see a power couple, and I'm going to be very practical and honest and vulnerable, but he sees a stay-at-home mom. I've got news for you. You're going to struggle to get that picture out of his mind, because he sees you, and I'm going to be as kind of like non-Santen or non-marketplace language. He sees you popping 8 kids across a 5-year window or across a 7-year window. But good people, there's nothing wrong with kids. We love kids. We must be a family, a healthy family. But that's all he sees you doing. So he sees you as an incubator on 2 legs. He sees you as a gestation machine on 2 legs. And that's all he sees you as. He doesn't see you as a mom who embodies the qualities of nurturing on another level. He doesn't see you co-leading this institution called the home, parenting the kids together, instructing them together, guiding them together. No, you pop them, I instruct them. So you mustn't crowd my space, woman. You mustn't crowd my space. That's toxic. And I'm being practical here. However, if she sees that, remember the 2 mentors I mentioned earlier on in the US, just one of our mentors, that they wear multiple hats interchangeably. So does he recognize in his thinking, in his wiring, the fact that just like Pumza, my beloved host, that you are wearing a coat of many colors, that there's more facets to you than actually giving birth. Giving birth is a mystery. It's gorgeous, but it doesn't end there. You need to help to shape and to mold what these kids become. And sometimes not by instruction, but by you pursuing your own dreams. And then they watch you. They go like, Mom, she rocks. But if Mom, all she does was pick up stuff after them, pick up the socks, clean up, maybe they will miss the other dimension of the couple, that he's powerful, she's powerful. It shouldn't be he's powerful, she's on mute. You know that thing of you're on mute. She shouldn't be on mute. She shouldn't be on mute. They should both, without competing in their roles, without competing, but complementing each other, they should allow themselves to be she unleashed, he unleashed. And then the world is waiting to see what a dynamite couple and household, and whatever they do in industry, whether together or in varying degrees, the world is waiting to see what united couples look like in their own right. So yes, please dare not to be placed on mute. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that is such a mouthful. And sure, I think the most astounding part about it is whether yes, we spoke about him not being ready or being ready at varying degrees. But what is the feedback like when you speak to other men in this kind of language? I mean, you related a story for me where you are a bit of a challenge for men.
That one. I'm gonna share the struggle here. The struggle is real.
Yeah.
Just like how I'm advising my fellow sisters in business and in their personal lives to not try and change him. Of course, you can improve him. But you know how they say it's easier to steer a moving car than one that is stationary? So he has to be in motion. He has to be in motion, moving towards a sense of healthy self. As a man, he has to be moving in that direction. Then you can help steer, you can bring that complementing perspective and that complementing piece of the puzzle. Maybe you are even the piece of the puzzle to him. So, but he has to be in motion. He has to be moving towards that healthy self, that self who's secure in his skin. So why am I sharing my struggle with you? And it's interesting how we think we are so different. There's many women. We've got more in common. Why? It's like how I dared my fellow leaders on the She Unleashed side of the leadership domain. I had a challenge coming to terms with the fact that I can't change him. Who's him? Him is my bros in the bro code that we had. Him is incoming friendships on the golf course, incoming friendships in the boardroom, at events, even at church. I'll dare say there are certain, this thing of male toxicity doesn't stay in the village, doesn't stay in the boardroom, because, and I'm not going to speak against churches, because in church we are all a work in progress.
Yeah.
At varying degrees of our growth. It means a statement of being in the process of transformation. It means there might be some residue toxicity in there at some point. So I encountered that where apart from being rejected by men in industry, I was also rejected regrettably by men in church. Why? You may wonder. And how does that make me similar to the women leaders in the room? It's because just like how I dared you not to try and change him, I realized that as much as I want to do business with him, incoming friend, a loaded client, or someone that I aspire to in industry, he is like 10 years ahead of where I want to be. I couldn't have him in my life. Why? Because I remember this one moment, one of the Santen executives who's in church, and I love this gentleman. I still adore him, even though he's not in my life now. I adore him. So we have this habit, my wife and I, she knows all my passwords on my devices, and I know her passwords. Sometimes it's not clear whose device is who, because we can interchangeably use each other's devices. So at this particular moment, it was in a big event, in a big church event. So I'm walking over to her. Hi, babe, quickly, I need to go fetch something. Can I have your phone? Because I think it takes better pictures. Then we just swapped it. As we swapped the phone, as I turn around, he stopped me. No, bro, I can't take it. Did I do something wrong? Did I mention an unfriendly word to my wife? Oh, my word, I'm going to be reprimanded now. And he went like, I can't take it, this thing that you are doing here with Preeti, in terms of you exchanging phones, is going to send a wrong message to our wives. Oh, so I didn't know that me being true to me being unleashed was going to make certain brothers in the boardroom or in the marketplace or even in the church environment, certain exceptions, uncomfortable, because some of you know me as somebody who's big on decentralization. And decentralization is both a technology of blockchain, but it's also a lifestyle, because I'm not going to go into the technical tech side of things, but there's no blockchain without transparency. So imagine me being this blockchain baron of Africa, and I'm compelling industries and supply chains to be open and to remove the silos and remove the walls. But at home, I'm all walled up, like, she can know my password. She can know this. So I think I couldn't afford to be a hypocrite by design of my industry calling. So I had to be open on the home front long before I even set my foot in a blockchain environment, long before we hired our first blockchain coders and engineers. I had to be transparent as a value core. I had to be a see-through person as a value core, even though I'm still coming into self, and the parts of me that I'm discovering, I'm sharing with her. She go like, oh, I didn't know that part. So it's a growing journey. But I think that moment in church where even other men in church came forward and kind of like said, no, we can't invite you guys for dinner. Why? Well, if you come into our space, you're going to have to leave those lovey-dovey ways at the door. What are those lovey-dovey ways? That's what we're all in love. No. You guys, you exchange phones, you spend time with each other too much, you work together, you share too much with each other, and you are comfortable by yourself as a couple. We can be at a conference, we'll still be together. The reason why we go separate ways is because we have to mingle with others. We have to enlarge our world. We have to meet new people. But we don't go to other people because it's one of those things where I'm at an event and I have to kind of like step into a fantasy world where I act like I don't know my family. No, we go out because we are leaders. We have to kind of like nurture and challenge ourselves. But we don't go to each other. I think one point I'll mention on this point is some people, lockdown came too soon for them, because then they came face to face with her and they go like, who are you again? I'm so to be rude, but I know you and I kind of like appear on the marriage certificate together, but remind me again what you value, because I dated you 10 years ago, but can we rediscover each other again? But fortunately, we didn't have that issue. We were already working together, living together, and just traveling together. So I'm just appealing to you out there, audiences, that kind of like get more in touch with your intuition about who's in front of you, rather than getting in touch with, he's going to become my project, I'm going to fix him. No, you don't need to fix him. You can help complement what he's trying to achieve as he aspires to be a healthy man, a powerful man, while you are unleashing your own superpowers. But don't go like, he's kind of a loser. He doesn't have aspirations. I'll deposit aspirations in there. Or he's too much of a beast. He's full of himself. Don't worry, I'm gonna tone him down. I'm gonna find the knob. He doesn't respect women, but I'm gonna wave my magic wand. He's gonna adore women. No, he won't. No, he won't, because the 20 women in his life before you came, he kind of like closed off to them. He kind of like put them on mute, permanent mute. So you might want to move into that neighborhood kind of like with humility to know that
Yeah. Tell me, how does it feel to be in a partnership with an unleashed woman? She unleashed, and she, of course, unleashed in a positive way. It means she's come into her full being. She knows who she is. She is also certain of where she is driving towards. So she has self-knowledge, she has self-confidence, and she has a very healthy self-esteem. Is it not daunting to sit around a pretty who is that in your life?
That's a good one. Fortunately for us, there are 3 pillars that hold together like a common thread that make us work. As much as we are both kind of like phasing into our power domain, what keeps us together as like a super glue is that firstly, the sense of thriving, or the sense of being unleashed. Remember, the she unleashed concept is such a dynamite, because there are communities that are yet to be unleashed. There are nations that are yet to be unleashed. Some of them, dreadfully, I'm speaking about Africa, some African nations are still waiting for permission from the West in order to come into their own sense of dominion and into their own sense of health and being unleashed, So I just wanted to drop that in a moment. But while she's working out what it means for her to be unleashed on a progressive, it had to be modeled in front of her. You see, it had to firstly be modeled in front of her and in front of me. We both had this thing being modeled of what it means for a woman to be unleashed. Both our moms are titans in their own domains, in their own right. So that's the first thing. And secondly, the desire to thrive and to kind of like live large, and whatever you do, it's kind of like has to be expressed at a 10x level. It had to be her desire, but my desire too. I had to desire it for myself as equally as she desires for herself. Then we can desire it together. And that, some of you may relate to it, and some of you might not be married, others are married, but have you realized how much of a high maintenance it is to keep a friend in your life who doesn't value what you value? It's going to blow up your wallet. It's going to deplete your energy tank. It's going to empty your love tank, because when you say, let's go to that destination as a holiday, she's thinking, no, friend, we're going in that direction. You're going to, oh my word. I'm not a camper. I'm not a happy camper. I like my 5-star crystal towers. And she's thinking, well, there's nothing wrong with camping, but you gotta value the same thing. So we both desired to see the carving, like a sculpting, the carving of our best selves. And then we see how those 2 sculptures look next to each other, those living sculptures. And of course, last but not least, this is a bit of a tough one. Both had to be willing to pay the price, because let me be real here. You can desire to be unleashed as a principle, but unless you're willing to pay the price. Maybe you're wondering, Shadrack is going all philosophical on me. I like being practical as equally as I'm philosophical. So being willing to pay the price is, let's say you're pursuing your MBA. Are you gonna put in the hours? Let's say you're pursuing your PhD. When it comes to the crux of the matter on a Friday evening, are you going to hit the books, or are you going to hit the club? Nothing wrong with hitting the club. if the environment enables you to accommodate that level of recreation, but what season are you in your life?
Yeah.
Are you in your sowing season, or are you in your reaping season? Some of you are women in your 20s, but you always hang out with women in their 60s. Nothing wrong with that. That's a perfect balance of energies. But what if they're in their harvest season of their life? What does that mean? They are empty nesters. What does empty nester mean? It means the kids have left. We've got our money. We are not chasing the next deal. I mean, deals are chasing. So you gotta be kind of like accommodate with your expectations that they have already paid the price, and now they are reaping the rewards. You are yet to pay the price. You are yet to make the sacrifices. So even if they invite you to come along on their private jet, there are days when you might have to turn them down because the books are waiting. It's their private jet, it's their penthouses, it's their wine farm, it's not yours. You still have to sweat, blood, sweat, and tears to work for your own wine farm. It's great when you can do high tea with them, right? When the time allows, but you still have to sweat it out and be willing to work it out. So circling back to my wife and I, we were both very interestingly compatible on being willing to grow our pain threshold and being willing to kind of like walk away from relationships like the fresh mates I told you about. I love those guys. I respect them. Now I learn from them from far. I didn't check them out of my life. I observe them from far. I take notes from far, but I just couldn't be in the same elevator with them because they were kind of like hostile towards my wife, which is my other self, you know. She is my self. So hostile towards her, you touch me, done. That's what's gonna happen on the streets. They're more honest, right? They say, you touch her, you're gonna go through me, you know. You're not on the street when they go all street fight. So I had to all go street fight. So on concluding, you and your friends, you and your spouse, I know you value similar things. Let's assume you value similar things. You and your spouse, and you and your maybe someone you're dating, or even those that are not dating, it's fine. You and your friends. Do you value the same things? One. Two, do you value the same things at the same degree? Because when the road is the road, what are they willing to sacrifice in order for them to grow and you grow? What are they willing to leave behind in order to be unleashed towards that which they define as their destiny? That's what I want to leave on this point as a thought to take away. And I know that She Unleashed community, they're taking notes. I know that you are extrapolating value. So on that note, what are you willing to give up? What is he or she willing to give up next to you in order to be unleashed? There's a price to be paid. Make no mistake. To win the prize with a Z, there's a price with a C that must be paid.
Absolutely. And I love how you're living it, because we are an Instagram kind of society that looks at how everything is done with ease. And you know what I'm saying? So behind the Instagram, it's just for people to recognize that there is the hard work. And I think part of unleashing, we unleash also because you're a leader. You know, you have to unleash the best potential out of you. There's a lot of work that you do by purely being a leader. So this was so amazing for me, and I really am setting up front an invitation. I have an invitation for Pretty to come back and talk to us about our money, but I also have a standing invitation for you, because it's a process. It's a conversation that will always be ongoing. Someone will pick up on this conversation, and I'm hoping that it's a male, and they'll pick up one aspect. There'll be a shift. A lady will pick up on this, because the things that you talk about, there are lessons, but some of the lessons will learn later. Fortunately, someone learns them quite sooner. So it's been such an honor. And you are the She Unleashed family. We can't be without.
I'm a fan, and I'm a family.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's been such a joy. And thank you so much for coming on board. So, what should we watching out next? Because you're doing a lot of things with Wifey. I know you've just launched now Coronet 48, and there's a lot of babies being formed. I mean, this.
There we go. So I've got 3 touch points on what the community can look out for. And I'm also going to circle back on a parting note to the community as to what they can look forward to in their own life. So the first thing, we've got a count on our desk that counts how many Saturdays are left to a certain milestones. It's what do you call it? It's a Saturday that matters. It's a week that matters, not the months, not the years, because we are deluded when we look at time in that way. So we are only 397 Saturdays away at this point in 2022, away from 2030. It's not an eternity. And why does that matter in terms of what the community can expect? It matters because 2030 is that flag in the ground where sustainable development goals have to be fulfilled. Eradicate poverty, empower her, bring this, bring that. Those are giant goals. And I know that at varying degrees in this She Unleashed community, the titans in the room, in their own right, they are powering those sustainable development goals in their daily mandates, like yourself, or maybe some of them are even in that impact space. Why is that important? The Africa we want is going to be materialized in our lifetime. We made up our mind. And I know there's like-mindedness across the community. Why am I saying that? There are 1,000 unicorns in the world, entities that are worth more than $1 billion, startups, that are worth more than $1 billion US. Why is that important? The unicorn capital of the world is the US, with 400 unicorns on US soil. India is following with 100 unicorns on Indian soil. Africa, my Africa, only has 7 unicorns. So why does that matter? Come 2030, whatever we are building between now and 2030, 397 Saturdays away, has to materialize the Africa we want, firstly from a blockchain perspective, where our supply chains are more inclusive of women, are more inclusive of African communities, and they don't kind of like deplete value to the West at the expense of Africa. That's not the African one. More on that in future discussions. So blockchain is being used by ourselves in a practical way to redeem Africa's supply chains from the power centers outside of Africa. That's what you can expect. That when you hear that certain industries, that the supply chains are more reformed, we want to put our hand up and say, you're welcome. That's the first thing. Number 2, Coronet 48 is creating an ecosystem, a safe zone for African startups to be permitted to be themselves and to be unleashed in their own right. So more on that. And of course, the writings on LinkedIn, you're welcome to follow me. Just Shadrack Kubyane on LinkedIn, because daily and weekly, I express my wins. Sometimes I express my losses and my failures, but in all of that, my leading with vulnerability, I'm hoping that it will unleash you on your own journey to feel like you don't have to be perfect. You can kind of like work it out on a daily basis as you go on your own journey, because before we know it, 397 Saturdays will be gone just like that. I'm wondering, what would you have done in your part of the world to unleash you so that those around you feel permitted for them to shine their own candlelight? So I did promise to say something to the community on a parting note is, let's stop waiting for permission to be great. Let's stop waiting for permission to be unleashed. Our beloved host Pumza can dare you to be unleashed, but you have to dare yourself. You have to permit yourself. And then are you willing to pay the price? On that parting note, it's been such a delight being here. Looking forward to coming back. Looking forward to also your feedback on LinkedIn as she posts this, as I amplified on my side. Talk to us, because this is not our chat, it's our collective dialogue. Talk to us. Let's get this party going even beyond this chat. Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, to our audience, there you have it. It does not come as rich, as authentic, and as transparent as it has today. My cup is full. My cup is full, and I enjoy these interviews because they're never about the interviewee. I also learn. I grow so much from the conversation. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, please do follow Shadrack. He's such an inspiration with a wife, Pretty Kubyane. They are on LinkedIn. Please do follow them. Thank you very much.
Thank you kindly.